Hi, I'm Annie, and I'm on the staff at NAMI Delaware. Thank you for joining us today for this Facebook Live. Today is actually part 2 of a series on planning for an uncertain holiday season. Our topic today is self-care strategies and conversation for peers, youth and families, and loved ones. So I'm really grateful for our 3 panelists, and I will be introducing them in just a minute. But first, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our agency and what we do, in case this is the first time you've heard about us. So to start with, NAMI stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness, and NAMI Delaware is the state agency in Delaware. So if you're joining us from outside of Delaware, there is a NAMI in your state as well. NAMI has been around for more than 40 years, and it is actually the largest grassroots mental health organization in the country, and it's focused on providing support and education and advocacy for people affected by mental illness. You'll be able to find your NAMI if you just go to their website, which is nami.org. Now, NAMI Delaware operates independently, as do all the NAMIs, and there are, like I said, there's one in every state, and some larger states have multiple offices of NAMI. So you can learn about your NAMI by visiting the national website, but you can learn about our NAMI by visiting namidelaware.org. We offer support groups and programming, all virtual right now. We also have a housing department where we are providing safe and affordable housing for 300 Delawareans who are affected by mental illness. Our work is focused on people who live with mental illness, but also those who care about them and those who want to support them and advocate on their behalf. We do awareness events and programming around education, just at the very general level of learning about warning signs and finding out ways to help. We have lots of things available on our website, and so I'm not going to go in and share all of those with you, but I will tell you we have an events calendar that you can check out and find out about upcoming events. We do have 2 support group events this month. For peers, we have NAMI Connection, and that is on December 17th at 6:30. And for family members, we have Family Support Group, and that's December 21st. And I believe that's at 7 p.m. We also have our monthly Sharing Hope Community Conversations event, which is December 17th. That starts at 6:30 as well. All of these events are virtual and they're all free, and they all require a registration online so that you can get your Zoom link. Now, today's conversation, as I said, is going to be focused on this holiday season and self-care. But I want to make sure that you know that you're not alone. This is a difficult time and that we're in this with you. If you feel like strong feelings are rising right now and you're having a hard time, we want to make sure that you have what you need right now. So we're going to share with you some crisis resources. There's the National Crisis Line, which is 741-741, and you can just text home and get immediate support, and that's 24/7. But also in Delaware here, we have the Hope line, and that is a phone line, and the number is below here. And also you can text DE Hope to 55753. So the Delaware Hope line is designed obviously here in Delaware, and it's been set up to connect our crisis services statewide. So now I am going to welcome our 3 panelists and ask them to introduce themselves now. Thank you for joining us. Hi.
Hello.
So I'd love to have you each just give a quick introduction.
Sure, I'll start us off. My name is Dr. Meghan Walls. I'm a pediatric psychologist with Nemours. I spend a lot of my time in our primary care offices, so making sure that kids in our community are connected to mental health resources, and also spend some time at Nemours working with our government relations folks, and have always felt really strongly about mental health policy work to make sure that we can give all kids and families access.
Thank you. Jill?
My name's Jill Shute, and I'm sorry my camera's not working, so you just have to put up with my voice today. But I've been involved with NAMI for a long time, about 35 years. And through NAMI, I've served on the board, and I've also run the support meeting in northern Newcastle County for that entire time. So, and we have a son. We have 4 sons, and one of them suffers from schizophrenia.
Thank you, Jill. And she's so humble. She didn't mention that she is one of the co-founders of NAMI Delaware. And I'd like to add that. Okay. Norwood.
Hey, I'm Norwood. I'm a mental health professional over at the Life Health Center. And so I spend much of my day working with children and adults in mental health service. I'm a trauma therapist as well. And we run five of the 7 elementary level school-based wellness centers. And we've got a lot of help from Nemours, so thank you for that, Meghan. And as well, recently we're just spending a lot of time helping folks to understand that this is a difficult time for all of us, so that we're all in it together, and that one of the things that this has done is allow us to explore how community really can be flexible and reconnect. So that's a bit of what I spend my time doing.
Great. And you're also a member of our advisory board, right?
I am a member of the advisory board, yes, at NAMI Delaware.
Yeah, a major volunteer. I have 3 amazing rock star volunteers right here on the screen. So this is cool. All right, so let's get started. So I've talked to each of you over time, over this 9 months of the pandemic, and certainly we've talked about how COVID-19 has affected people. It's affected children, it's affected adults, it's affected schools and workplaces and just pretty much everything. And we know that now the numbers are even on the rise, and the data is showing that mental health symptoms are up, substance use is up. And so it's pretty much what we expected, right? It's been 9 months and we kind of saw this coming, but now here we are facing the holidays. And our goal today is to talk about ways that we can practice this or experience this unusual holiday season safely and as best we can with a healthy outlook, right? With our mental health in mind. So, have each of you seen higher levels of stress in what you do lately? Does anyone want to start with that?
I can start. And although the holiday season is always stressful for those who live lives that are impacted by mental illness, this year brings those additional fears, serious isolation. But what I'm seeing that most concerns me is it also brings a barrier to accessing quality care. Without that in-person care, that eye-to-eye contact and reading body language and assessing a person's self-care, a lot of our loved ones are experiencing heightened symptoms that are going undetected and therefore untreated. So that's the biggest change that I've seen this year. That's negative.
Thank you. That's a really good point. Does anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to, what you said, I think is so true, which is we expected this to happen, right? We sort of said there's going to be a second wave of COVID, and then there's probably going to be a surge of distress related to mental health. And so part of it is that I want to also make sure we're normalizing, while we want people to get help and reach out, we've been sort of in the world of mental health calling this the COVID cloud, right? You can't get out of it because it just seems to keep going. And so I think it's predictable that we're seeing this. In pediatrics, there has been a rise in kids and teens reporting to emergency departments with psychiatric illness or psychiatric concerns, so suicidality, up as much as 24%, which is pretty significant.
Wow.
We have certainly seen in our outpatient offices an increase in distress and an increase in people wanting to come in, which is a good thing, right? So the upside of this, and I know we'll talk about this later, is that we're seeing more people asking for care, but we're certainly seeing this uptick. And we sort of mentioned the data's in. We have that data. We know in Delaware, approximately 30% of individuals are experiencing clinical symptoms of anxiety and depression. So it's real, it's here. It does not mean we're hopeless and we can't get through it and we can't deal with it. But I think, we have to be realistic about addressing these issues.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Being realistic is critical, and I think a lot of us forget that. Norwood, did you have anything to add? Are you seeing higher levels of stress in what you do? You mentioned the wellness center and also your other work. So
Yeah, I mean, both Jill and Megan have shared is that we're seeing higher levels of we're seeing increased levels with children and families coming in. One of the things that's also interesting is that um, access to everything has been greatly decreased in that for people, there are people who've already experienced access issues in the past. Those are elevated. And for people who've never experienced access issues in the ways that we're seeing it, those two are compounding the distress that everyone is experiencing. And there's also uh, there's an interesting piece is that it exposes how help seeking um, has really not been something that we've championed as a value. And so when we consider particularly what Dr. Waltz was talking about was folks having not being able to access services, not knowing how to access services, not knowing for the first time there are folks who don't know where to go. They've never had to ask the questions or known to ask the questions that we are all now having to ask: where, who, what, where, when, and why uh, uh, do I go to get the appropriate care, the appropriate help. And so one of the things that I'm really glad that this talk does is it provides people one more opportunity to say that there are multiple places where we can go. There's NAMI, there's AI, there's Christiana, there's Life Health. There's a lot of places that people may not have their names and numbers on their on their Rolodex or on their speed dial. Um, so but definitely the distress of access. And also I think the other piece is that for folks working in like our first responders, those who are working directly with children and families and adults, we are also in many ways experiencing that gap of accesses that we want. For the first time we may be reaching out to folks and not knowing how to necessarily get to them in ways that we know we have help services, and we want to be able to exhaust them in ways that folks can really utilize them. And so there's a wide variety of different stressors that we all tackle on a daily basis.
sure, absolutely. Now, no, so Norwood, when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, one of the first things that came to mind was my conversation with you very early on in this pandemic, where we talked about the term social distancing. And you had such a very strong reaction to that term. And I really loved what you had to say about it. So I'm hoping for the viewers that you can share that. And then, with that kind of in mind, what do you have as far as recommendations or thoughts for adults who have to practice that experience? And I'll let you explain the way you like to phrase it. But also during this holiday season, how can people take care of themselves while still honoring the requirements to stay safe?
Yeah, so and you're right, I had a very visceral reaction.
You did, and it was
And I think
awesome.
I still do. I still do. The term social distancing, it just makes no sense to me. No human beings are social creatures where we don't do distancing socially at all. It doesn't make sense. Um, when I'm not at when I'm at work, I am physically distanced from most of my loved ones, I am not socially distanced from them. So I always think about it from the terms of uh, connecting beyond distance,
Mhm.
which is what we've done. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. I wish that that was that or some turn of the phrase might be more utilized, because I think that the reinforcing of gaps in space and disconnection are not useful for humanity. To be honest with you, I don't think it's useful for anyone, and it's scary. It frightens people.
Yeah.
It you know it suggests that isolation is where we are at, and we know that isolation destroys human life. It's isolation is fatal. So I have a really big reaction to to that, but I also understand that we are able, in as human beings, as creative, really quite amazing and wonderful uh, uh, people and beings, to find ways to connect beyond distance. And a bit of that is just even how we perceive that is that we are always able to connect beyond distance. And so one of the so that's I believe in connecting beyond distances, and that's the term that I use. Or I may physically distance, but I'm not spiritually distanced. I'm not emotionally
Mm.
distanced. I'm not socially distanced.
Right.
uh, and some of the I actually came I had I I actually made a little I forget what they're called, anagram, but
Mhm.
when you have like a I can't remember the term. I'm not really good with these things. But I made it up for with actually a kid that I was working with, because and actually she made it up because she's much, most kids are much brighter than me. So, and we were talking about feelings. I mean, it's a thing. And but we were talking about ways that uh, she thought would be helpful for her family and other families if she was in charge of the world,
Mm.
to use feeling words and some of those things to help others out. And I asked her if I could share this with everybody else, and she graciously gave me permission, so I'll share it. And
Cool.
it's paces or pages. She wasn't sure which one she wanted to use, so she came up with two. So
Okay.
paces, patience is the P, acceptance.
Mhm.
Uh, C, if it's paces, would be connection. I'm going to add beyond distance.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, or E was empathy, and S was safety. And she said that if we do all these things, then I think that it'll be a. She said if we do all these things, I think it'll be a really nice Christmas, is what she said.
Aw.
And what I thought was interesting is that when she rethought it, she added a G instead of a C.
Uh-huh.
So she had patience, acceptance, grace,
Mm.
empathy, and safety. And this came
Wow.
from an 11. Yeah, so this came from an 11-year-old,
Wow. I
and I was
love
like,
that.
oh,
If we could
yeah. So I
practice
thought that
those
that was worth.
things, we can get through these holidays. Well, please pass on our thanks to this brilliant mind of yours that you're connecting to. What a great
I
opportunity.
will.
That was awesome. Hopefully they can go in and view this video and see that they're famous now.
Yeah, tell her we're going to use it a lot.
Yeah,
That's right. I have a
A
feeling
lot.
NAMI Delaware, we're going to come up with some sort of graphic that shows that. We can give her credit. So thanks,
absolutely.
Norwood. Yeah. So Meghan, you and I talked. Actually, I have to give you credit, Meghan, because we're doing this Facebook Live right now, and we've done several. But you, my friend, were the first Facebook Live person with NAMI Delaware, and we got through that one and had fun. And you shared some amazing things talking about anxiety with kids. That was March, I think March 30th. Doesn't that feel like 100 years ago? Yeah, it really does.
It
So
really
thank you
does.
for doing that. And if you're watching this video now and you didn't see the video where Meghan shares some great anxiety reducing tips for parents, please check that out on our website. But Meghan, here we are 9 months later, and we're facing these holidays. What do you have to add to those tips for parents helping kids?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, that was great. I was just going to say pass because, pages sounds great. Let's just do that. I think grace is actually a big one, right? So we have to give, as parents, ourselves grace. And I was laughing because earlier I would sign onto a Zoom and someone said to me, Meghan, your Zoom picture is a glamour shot. And I said, oh, that's what I looked like before COVID. So if we look at the video in March, I might look a little bit better than now. But I think it's true. We all need to sort of understand that this is difficult. And for parents, one of the biggest holiday tips I've been giving them is start now, right? In beginning mid-December, talking about what your holidays will look like. Don't wait until December 24th and say, oh, sorry, we're not going to grandma's house. Have a discussion as a family. Sit down and say, here are the things we're doing. And all joking aside, some of those pages things are really important, right? So at the top of my list as a pediatric provider in a healthcare system has to be safety, right? So we spend a lot of times talking to families about how do we discuss this, because we know it's essential for us all to get through this pandemic. And one of the things that is, I think, both important but helpful for kids is to talk about what things your family is doing that are helping to get, two things that are helping to make our community safer and healthier, but also what are we doing to help keep ourselves safe, right? So when you can word it as, this is some things we have control over, here are the things we're doing that we can help with. We can do this together. It makes kids feel much better than you just can't do this. You can't hang out with your friends. You can't go to grandma's house. You can't go play with your cousin. Instead, what can we do? Focus on your cans, not your can'ts. And that's a general parenting tip, right? We want to tell kids to walk slowly, not
run. Yeah.
Right?
Great.
Think about it, just reframe that here, right? So, okay, we can't go to grandma's house, but instead of saying that, say this holiday season, I'm so excited because we are going to do these 3 great things at home. And here are the ways that you as a kid or a teen can help keep us safe. And when we rephrase it like that, what it also helps our kids do, and frankly ourselves as parents do, is alleviate some of that guilt when we're talking to the next person. So they don't feel bad telling their friend they can't come over because they're like, oh, but we're being safe because of COVID. This is why we're doing it. When we just throw rules and restrictions at people, they have a really hard time with it. But if we can reframe that so that it's helpful, so that they are in control, so that they're looking forward to things, I think that's how we can help families to really see this holiday season as a more enjoyable time rather than a holiday wrapped in the things we can't do.
Wow, that is so powerful. Thank you. And I think to sum it up, just focus on the cans, not the can'ts. That's a perfect way to embrace this. That and pages, I'm ready. This is great. Now we're going to loop in Jill and hear about families, and then I think we've just pretty much solved all the problems. So Jill, I shared, I've talked with Norwood, I've talked with Meghan on Facebook Live. Both of them were fabulous. And I talked with you on Facebook Live too, Jill. We talked back in May and we focused on family and loved ones, which is really your wheelhouse, right? Like you said in your introduction, you've been providing support through the family support group for as long as NAMI Delaware has been in existence. So what, more than 35 years?
Yeah, 37.
And in 37, yeah. And so in all of those, and that I have to say is how I met Jill. And that's how I became part of NAMI Delaware. So thank you. Shout out to that. But you've been doing those support groups so long. That's 36 then holiday seasons potentially, yes. Right? Heading into the 37th. What have you seen over time as far as the impact that the holidays have on families? And then what do you think, if anything, will be different this time?
Before I say anything else, I do want to say that I'm speaking about families whose lives are impacted by a severe and persistent mental illness. Schizophrenia, serious bipolar disorder, major depression, borderline personality. So my experience has been with families who are dealing with rather extreme situations. And before I even speak about the holiday season, I'd like to address what I call marker days, because families who are living with a loved one who has a significant challenge of mental illness, those marker days are not only the holidays, but their birthdays, the beginning of the school year, a sibling's wedding or graduation, the birth of a sibling's child, their parents' retirement or aging. All these are markers and marker days, that's my term, that indicate a time of growth or change. And these days present a challenge to families impacted by mental illness. For the loved one who is living with mental illness, these days often make them feel left behind. They feel as though their life has stalled out while their friends and family are moving on. and that generates all kinds of emotions for that person. So families who have a loved one who has severe and persistent mental illness have a unique challenge during all of these marker days. They want to provide a joyful family celebration that includes all their loved ones, yet does not exacerbate the symptoms of their loved one who is living with a mental illness. And in the normal holiday season, you also have the hubbub of the holidays causing additional layers of stimulation, expectations of joy, shortness of tempers, increased social interaction, which won't happen this year, and all the family gatherings and all the emotion that those family gatherings entail. Again, like I said, this year, COVID will take away some of those complications. But therefore, when families are planning a celebration of any kind, whether it's a holiday or a birthday, it's imperative that they be proactive, intentional, and inflexible, and that they do some serious groundwork, as Meghan said, ahead of time, in the calm before the storm. That's when you do your planning and your talking. For family gatherings, we make adjustments of all kinds. And I want to make a statement about mental illness being physical. We talk about mental health, but when we speak about mental illness, we are talking about a physical condition in the brain. So I don't like to separate mental illness out of physical illness. It is a physical illness because the brain is certainly a part of your body. And we make all kinds of accommodations for physical illnesses. If we have a loved one who is lactose intolerant, we put almond milk in the mashed potatoes. You know, if someone's had a car accident and they're in a wheelchair, we put a temporary ramp up to our front door. I mean, we do all kinds of things. My father was hard of hearing, so when you spoke to my dad, you spoke slowly and distinctly, you know, and loudly. So we understand that we need to make accommodations, but when it comes to mental illness, there's a resistance because people look at mental illness and think, well, that's, you know, they're just behaving badly.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see it as a symptom of an illness. So but anyway, what the family needs to do is they need to be really upfront and honest. This is the proactive and intentional stuff. Be upfront and honest with the family. I'm going to use our son Stephen's name. I know that you think Stephen monopolizes our time and our resources. His illness certainly has called on us to do more than we anticipated, but we still want our family to be able to gather together and enjoy one another on these special days. So set the tone that we really want to get together as a family. And then when you meet with your family members, those who don't yet understand the illness, do a little work ahead of time. They may become judgmental or angry or scared. So it's important that they be educated ahead of time. And I know we have some resources at the end of today's presentation. There's some wonderful online videos that you could email a link to your loved ones who just don't get it and help them start to get it. Also, we need to give family members suggestions on how to best communicate with our ill-loved family member, keeping all those comments low-key and positive. No pressure to make the ill one participate or making them feel guilty about anything. Just keep it upbeat and positive. If you think one of your family members may get angry during the gathering, please talk to them ahead of time. Tell them that you would rather they joined in the celebration and enjoyed themselves, but if they start to experience anger or frustration, you would rather they would gracefully, and there's that word grace again, they would gracefully leave before they allow their anger to be displayed. And then have yourself ready for a potential situation, a bad situation. Plan things ahead of time in your own mind. What are you going to say? How are you going to react? Don't let it catch you by surprise. Be ready. Even if you have to memorize a few sentences of calm and joy and peace, memorize those and say those to your loved ones who are angry or who may be getting out of control. And that's all that intentional stuff beforehand, like Meghan was talking about. And then talking to your loved one who's ill, ask them if they would, what part of the celebration is good for you? How would you like to be involved? What would you like to do? Would you like to be there for the whole thing? Would you like to just be there for part of it? Would you like to have your own celebration? You know, would you like to take your nieces and nephews and go out for pizza? You know, I mean, I know this is COVID time, but in general, those kind of things can be done. Would you like to have lunch with just your siblings rather than coming in for the whole shebang and everybody being there? And over the years, I've learned this from families who have tried these things, and they really work. It's also important to talk to your loved one prior to the event to set up an escape plan. I know our Stephen could handle about an hour, hour and a half of a family gathering, and then he'd go up to his bedroom. And before I understood the illness, I'd like go up and try to coerce him to come down. Oh, come on down, honey. We want you to be part of the family. You know, we're going to be doing this. No, that's not what he needed. He needed to be left alone.
Right.
And so, and I had to learn to give him the freedom to do that, and that it's okay. Just like I'd put a ramp up to the door when somebody can't walk, I gave Stephen permission to escape to his bedroom. And also to keep the day itself or the gathering itself as simple as possible. Do as much ahead of time as you can so that the hours leading up to the arrival of the event are not full of chaos, especially if your ill loved one lives at home with you. I don't know how your house is right before an event, but my house gets rather chaotic. You know, I'm rushing around, and I learned through my interactions with our son Stephen to keep things as calm as possible, keep it as simple as possible. The event is so we can enjoy one another, not so I can show off my cooking skills. That's the event, is so we can enjoy one another. So this year, I think especially, it will be easy to keep it simple because we have to keep it simple.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
So that's the silver lining with COVID is, but again, no matter what you're doing, whether it's COVID or non-COVID, whether it's a birthday or Christmas, it's important to keep it intentional and proactive, and to keep yourself ready for anything, and then be flexible. It may not go as you planned. And so there your grace comes in again. Just be calm and affirming to everyone involved. And that word affirmation is something that folks who live with severe and persistent mental illness, the people who suffer from these illnesses, get very little affirmation in their life. And as Norwood said, we are social beings. We need social interaction. We can't have social distance, but the illness itself causes social distance. And it causes family members to remove themselves from interaction with their ill loved one. And I could go on for hours, as Annie knows, but it's really important that we learn how to affirm people and for who they are as people, not for what degrees they have after their name or how they earn their money, but who they are as a person, for their sense of humor, for the joy they have at going for a walk in the woods. Affirm people and let them know that you love them and you care about them and you want their life to be a good life.
Absolutely. I am so glad that you are part of this conversation and that you've started NAMI Delaware and that you're still such a powerful advocate for so many people, Jill. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry that I can't see your face because your camera isn't working, but it's just so great to hear you speak. And every time you do, it just gives me chills. Thank you. And, you know, those of you who are tuning in today, first of all, I want to mention to all of you, if you haven't checked out, we have a lot of comments I'm going to address in just a minute. But Jill just shared some really powerful information for families who are supporting an individual affected by serious and persistent mental illness. And while a lot of the conversation around gatherings might not be appropriate this year, right? But please put those away. Please put those ideas away and remember them. Go back. Luckily, we'll have this video for people to reference because you have so many years of wisdom packed into those few minutes that you shared. And I just want to thank you again for sharing all of that. So we have some really great comments, and I wanted to make sure Dr. Walls and Norwood and Jill all saw them. So we've got some people saying, thank you, great conversation. And there's a question about what are some long-term effects for our children. And I think either Norwood or Dr. Walls could address those when we talk about trauma, right? And we can absolutely address those. And then there's one other thought, comment, Norwood, love pages, such wisdom from a young person. So that's really nice. And then another question kind of related to the first one about children. The tips for parents are being requested. Perhaps we can find a way to get those to share out. It looks like Representative Longhurst is asking for that. So do you want to address the long-term effects for children, either of you or both of you?
Sure, I can start. I think when we think about COVID, the way that I sort of conceptualize COVID is as we conceptualize trauma. So I think you're right in that way. But here's what we know about trauma. What we know about trauma is it affects everyone differently. We know that some people will have long-term effects. If we look at the data on children and traumatic events specifically, about 10% still have symptoms a year out. So if we think about it in that way, which is I think the only way we really know how to capture it right now, I think that's how we can think about it. So we don't know exactly, we don't have long-term data, but we do know that difficult, hard times for kids, and I think we can think about things like virtual and hybrid and back and forth learning. We can think about things like limited exposure to their friends. So what I like to also say, always in combination with that, is instead of thinking about the long-term negative effects, because I think we get stuck on that, is what are some things that we can do to help kids be more resilient, right? So, Norwood mentioned those connections. They're really important. So I've said things like, schedule your kids to have, even if it's a Zoom call where they're making a craft on one end and their other friend is on the other end. I know it's not perfect, but make that effort. They need those social connections. Keeping your routines and your schedules and your meal times and your bedtimes, that helps people to support positive mental health across the lifespan. But for kids, we're really teaching them that life can still be predictable even when there's something difficult going on. Right. So I think the overall answer is, we don't know exactly, but I suspect some kids will struggle with this more than others. We are seeing disparate populations affected by COVID. So we know that in Delaware specifically, some of our immigrant populations and some of our inner city Black communities have been more affected by COVID. And so I think we need to remember that those families might need more support. Norwood mentioned sometimes it's harder to get even not mental health supports, but just other supports at this time that families usually have. But if we can instill some of those things that help our kids be resilient, I suspect we can actually curb the longer term effects. And, in the meantime, I think pay attention when kids are struggling. So making sure that we notice change in sleep, change of social interactions, change of eating, and that we get kids help now. Because the other thing is we know the earlier we intervene, the better off kids are long term.
Sure, absolutely. Norwood, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I mean, I think Dr. Walls really hit a lot, hit all the main points. I think the one thing that might be important in addition to that is that there's one of the big things that when we think about traumas or think about some of these the negative traumas or the distressing things is that there's a sense of a loss of control that many people experience, most people experience. And so one of the important things about that is that we are able to take some of these things that maybe have shifted in our daily routines and understand that we can intentionally begin to build new normals into our routines. One of the things that trying to control something that is not going to be controlled, and for many people we can become a futile fight, and we can get locked into that. I think the other piece also, and as I hear the question, I hear this the similar question from many parents: how can I help my children? How can I help my children? How can I help my children? Parents are, when you think of martyrs, a parent typically comes to mind for me, because a parent will sacrifice themselves for their children at every cost. And I always am reminded of anyone who's ever been on an airplane, that the safety modules that they give you. Although I'm sure
I haven't been on an airplane in a while,
no one's been on an airplane
right?
for like the past 10 months, but it's to put the mask over yourself. One of the things I think is so important is that what we give to our children comes from us. It comes directly from you. And so as you care for yourself, you are caring for your children. There's a reciprocity. We're not doing something at our children. They're not doing something for us. There's a reciprocity in the relationship, and that to care for yourself while you, as you care for your kids. I don't know that we always know that we're allowed to do that. Sometimes I've heard parents say it feels selfish. And I don't think that it's selfish. One of the things that I do know is that we are living in unusual times. Unusual times often require unusual activities. We wouldn't do it. It would not look necessarily normal to be calm and relaxed in the middle of a very chaotic and situation. We do what we need to do, and we find balance in that. But taking care of as the parents take care of their children, I think it's equally important to understand to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. Keeping routines, changing routines to make a different kind of consistency can be important. It doesn't have to be the old consistency for it to be consistent. Um, naming, being allowed to name the hardship, being allowed to know that it's okay to not always feel okay.
Mm-hmm.
Allowing our children to know we don't have to protect them from their own feelings. They're born with the same number of feelings. They just may not have the language and the words to express them. Giving them the language and the words of that we understand and know is a wonderful legacy to pass down to not only your children but your grandchildren as they share it to them. Know that communication is open. That we're allowed to be who we are and understand and feel who we are as we are. And as a parent, I'm going to share that with you. We want to do it with healthy boundaries, and you want to do it in ways that are responsible, um, you know, um, and safe for your children. But the feelings that your children are experiencing, they may not have the words for them, and that we often think about teenagers, and teenagers will come up with words that we're like, we wish you didn't know that word sometimes, but and so I even think about, they may have the language, but they may not know how to use it and how to express their feelings in ways that are, you know, um, you know, uh, uh, holistic and useful for themselves within the family unit. And so teaching, allowing that space. Um, uh, Jill talked about allowing that that escape time.
Mm-hmm.
I think we also need to make sure, I think it's important that we allow that not just for, having a physical escape time, but also an emotional escape time. We're allowed to allowing the mistakes are, knowing that the mistakes will happen and allowing them to happen and allowing that forgiveness and that um, uh, opportunity to then, let's, restore the relationship and know that that is a part of the healing that we all go through. It's amplified now, but knowing that we can make that a part of our intentional activities as we, pass on the legacy of really caring and healing can be a really wonderful thing that parents can share with themselves and into their children.
Sure. Thank you.
And
So,
if I could just
yeah,
jump in.
Jill, please. I saw that you unmuted yourself.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
please.
just want to piggyback on what Norwood said because it's so important. We stress this with families if they have their mentally ill loved one living in their home and they are a caregiver, it's extremely important that that the other members of the family, the parents, the caregivers, take care of themselves. Find things that fuel them. It doesn't that feed their soul, so that they have the energy then to come back home and be a caregiver. And I just wanted to reiterate that it's so important for family members to care for themselves. If they're the caregiver, they need to also take care of themselves and not feel guilty about
Yes.
joining a choir or sitting and reading a book or whatever it is that fuels
Right.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're coming up on time, but I did want to just ask, I have two more questions to ask each of you. First of all, I think we alluded to this before, but silver linings. I'm trying really hard on a personal level and professionally too, to seek out silver linings right now. In the last 9 months, it's hard to do, but doing that I think helps with optimism and helps us, have hope, right? So do each of you have anything to share with regard to silver linings that you've found?
I'll go first.
Sure.
I just think it's what COVID has done. It has taught us, and Meghan has touched on this. It's taught us to be intentional. It's taught us to plan out interactions. And it's a wonderful time for families to make a change. If old patterns weren't positive and successful, then COVID presents a time to really sit back and assess those, think about it, and perhaps make permanent changes for the future. So that's my silver lining.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great one, Jill. I think a couple things. I think not just intentional, but also present. So I think people have been able to be more present in what they're doing. I know lots of parents who say they've gotten to know their kids better during this time, even though they drive them a little bit over the edge at times, right? But they still are feeling like, oh, I know this thing about my 7-year-old that I wouldn't have known if they were in school all the time. Or I know this thing about my partner that I wouldn't have known if they were at work all the time. And the other thing that I think a lot of us are feeling is this sense of like a hug from our communities of, collaboration, of camaraderie. Annie can attest to the fact that like friends texting and calling, right? Or meeting outside for a walk somewhere safe helps us to kind of all get through these times. So I think what we've seen is that people are coming together more. I think we've seen that, all the way down from our households to our friend groups to our work groups. And I think when I think about it even more broadly, I think about something like the COVID vaccine, right? That would have taken years in the past. And we've seen tech and science and all these people come together. And I think what it's shown me more than anything is that when we want to get things done, we can. And that people can support each other. And that really there is some pull for this common goal of goodness. And I think we've seen that more and more the last year than ever, and folks helping out each other when they possibly can.
Absolutely. Thank you. Norwood, do you have any thoughts on silver linings?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. Yeah, I think what I really like both what Jill and Meghan says, and I'm a musician during the other half of my day, and I always think about the difference between scripted or written music and then jazz, where you have the opportunity where there's a sense of a foundation of what really kind of works, but we still get the opportunity to improvise. We get to create, we get to discover, and that discovery happens right now and right in real time, and we get to feel.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that is, I think that sometimes I think that a bit of some of what we're understanding is that we're feeling things that we may have not felt that have been there for a while, and I remind myself that it's okay to feel those things because they were always there. We're born with all the feelings that we're ever going to have, and they show up when they need to. But I think it's so wonderful that we've really seen this beautiful improvisation. Just someone I heard it yesterday. Someone said it's delicious. I love it. I'm like, I'm not sure how much COVID-19 I can eat. I'm not eating any more of it, but it is true. There is a wonderful improvisational experience that I think that we're seeing. We're seeing things that have not happened, and I think to be able to understand and discover and then and embrace that, we are not as stuck as we thought we were, and we don't have to remain that way. And so we've seen innovation, we've seen tremendous innovation. We've seen stamina that we didn't think that could happen. We've seen the embracing of populations that we did not think was going to that people didn't think could ever be seen in a lifetime. And that's a real thing. There was a time when, just thinking about how we kind of dismantled privilege and understood that and people are understanding that everyone is 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 equally valuable. I always say, we're all in the room. Your presence is your invitation, and we're seeing that. And to Jill's point, we think about just the beauty and the wonderful experience that people long and continue to have. I understand that mental illness is just another. It's an illness, and with that requires the same kind of compassion, the same kind of love, the same kind of support, the same kind of connection that we all deserve. And so when the fact that we're having this conversation, I'm not sure that this conversation would have been as embraced or as connected with so many people as it has over this past few months, is absolutely a part of that improvisation. And I think that I enjoy a good tune, so I'm waiting to continue to see what more happens.
I love that. I've never heard that. We've heard a lot of wonderful silver linings, but I've never heard the most recent, like 9 months can be compared to a piece of jazz music and the way we've responded
I
with
love
improvisation. I love that. That is brilliant. I hope we can turn that into a graphic too. We're going to have to get our communications team really working on viewing this video and coming up with lots of little captures, little screen captures. Speaking of that, Jill, there's a comment here. Someone quoted you. They repeated the quote, "Find things that fuel them," and they said that's so hard during COVID when so much that might fuel us, like friend time, gym time, dining out, is so challenging.
So you have
That's
to be improvisational.
exactly. There you go.
Find other things. There are other things that fuel you. I guarantee you that there are other things that you can do during this time that will fuel you. Get creative and find it, because they're there.
That's right. That's great. So before we wrap up, since this topic is about self-care, we've kind of touched on it certainly, but very quickly, and we're going to share resources at the end, but could you each just tell me one example of what you're doing for self-care?
Well, I don't particularly like to exercise every day, but even though I don't go to the gym, which I did a lot, I am exercising every day, and I am practicing my singing more than I've ever done before. So Norwood, I'm with you on being with music and just getting deeper into my faith. I've read the Bible more during COVID than I've ever read it before. Not because I'm afraid, but because I have time. It's wonderful. I love it.
That's great.
Grace is
Great. Thank you, Jill.
Jill, I like that you said that about exercising. I have been trying to. It's harder when my gym is closed. So making sure that we still find ways to exercise. So for me, that's hiking and getting outside with my dogs and my kids and making sure that we're getting some exercise in. It also is finding ways to still connect to people. So one of my things for self-care is making sure I reach out to friends and that I'm still having those connections. And then one other one that I think has been hard on and off during the pandemic, but is always a good outlet for me is reading. So it shuts my brain off to reality and gives me a story to read, and I can sort of get absorbed in that. And I've noticed that my kids, when I read, are reading more. So that is, a positive of that. But I think we can all do, to Jill's point about it's hard. It's harder to find these things during a pandemic, but we can, and doing these little things does help.
Absolutely. Thank you. And how about you, Norwood? What are you doing for self-care?
I'm going to say the thing that no one else is going to say is that I have been Netflix binging. I've actually been able to actually watch shows that I haven't been able to see in like a year. That I'm like, oh, I wonder what happened. But reading is something that I've had time to do, which I really enjoy, and actually yoga has been really really helpful. I kind of get my exercise and I get meditation and balance and a little bit of quiet all at the same time, and I find time every day to just do that, and that's been really useful for me. It's just doing like a half an hour of yoga, and then the rest is Netflix binging.
Very good. So we got a couple comments actually. Kathy says, I'm relying a lot on my faith and prayer time and walking my dog. That's great. Thank you, Kathy. And Tracy says, thank you, Norwood, for keeping it really real. Netflix for days. That's awesome. And Tracy also said, for me, cooking is self-care. That's great. Yes, I will piggyback and say I've definitely done a lot of Netflix. Haven't done as much book reading, but because we got a puppy. So the pandemic puppy happened in our house, and we're really enjoying her. And we're doing some cooking. I actually made a pie crust for the first time in my life. Mom, if you're watching, see, I told you I would do it eventually, and I did. So, before we close out, this has been so much fun. I want to thank you all for being here. And those of you who are tuning in, thank you. If you're watching the video afterwards, thank you. And please check out our previous Facebook Lives, because each of these three amazing panelists have been featured before. And I do want to let you know that we have some resources to share with you. So I think Wesley is going to be sharing those in the chat. I'm not sure if he's doing it right now live or if he'll do it later, but Jill put together a fabulous listing of wonderful links, books, articles for people to check out that are appropriate for really everyone, whether or not you fit a certain audience that we've talked about today. I think a lot of what she's sharing can help everyone. So I want to thank you, and thank you, Jill, for putting that group together, group of resources. Does anyone have any parting thoughts before we close out? I just want to thank you for being here, all of you.
Well, thank you, Annie, very much for opening this up for folks, and just go out and affirm yourself and affirm others with grace, right? Norwood?
Thank you.
Forever. Pages.
Joyce Fangman typed in, "You're all great. Thank you for these awesome nuggets." I love it. All right. Does anyone have anything to close out?
Just thank you guys for having us again. I think these are really important, and I'm glad that we're continuing to talk about mental health. I think that, you know, families and adults, kids, everybody needs to hear it, and for us to continue to have these conversations.
Absolutely. Thanks. Norwood, did you have anything else to say?
Absolutely.
You're going to do some improv
No,
jazz? I love that.
Yeah, I don't even have an instrument near me.
Oh, you don't
They're
have
all
an
in the
instrument
other
right
room.
there. She's bringing in right now. And Jill will sing. See, we're ready. We've got a band.
I'll do a little rhythm section here. No, I think I'm just very yeah. No, I'm excited that the conversations are continuing. I am glad that our communities have moved into this new chapter where this is a conversation that is not a odd or unusual or different conversation. It is the conversation that when we talk about the whole person and whole health, that we don't exclude pieces of people or groups of people, that we understand that it takes all of us, and that everyone, well, you know, my little saying, you know, your presence is your invitation in the room, and we need everyone present, and everyone's invited to participate in our communities. And I think that this is just a wonderful thing that NAMI puts on to keep everybody included.
Thank you. I love that. We are going to make so many cool graphics with all of your quotes. All three of you have said so many important things today. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see you in our next Facebook Live in 2021. Happy holidays. Stay safe. Bye-bye.